Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Sarah Montague. The police are here to do us more harm than good. That's what my guest today said after Michael Brown, an unarmed black teenager, was shot by a white policeman in Ferguson, Missouri. He's the rapper Tef Poe, whose real name is Kareem Jackson, and is a leading figure in the protests that followed the killing. He's described what the police did as a declaration of war. He said, "My grandparents endured this type of treatment so we wouldn't have to." So if you are young, black and poor in America today, are you at war with the police? Tef Poe, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Do you remember the moment when you heard about Michael Brown's death and what had actually happened?
I was at home that day. It was a very normal day for me. I was actually on tour at the moment, and we had a layover at home for the weekend, and I was getting ready to go to a party that me and my friends actually promote once a month, a hip-hop party. We were just looking forward to the weekend. I woke up that morning. I uploaded the flyer for the party to invite people on social media to the party. And in the process of doing that, I scroll down on my Instagram and I see a picture of Michael Brown's stepfather. And he was holding a sign that said, "My unarmed child has been murdered by Ferguson police." Initially, I didn't know how to feel about that, but the look in his face and just the pure distraught upon him kind of made me freeze. And unfortunately, in St. Louis, police shootings in the black community are not an uncommon thing. So for quite some time, I sat there, and I didn't really move. I wasn't really galvanized enough to leave the house and run into the streets. It wasn't like I looked at the phone and said, "Oh my God, we have to go." What happened was I sat there, and different people in my social media universe began to talk about this. Almost everyone that in my feed was talking about it simultaneously. And I live with my manager, and I go to him and I say, "You know, the cops just shot this 17-year-old kid in Ferguson. What's going on?" And
there was a moment when you decided, what, you've got to go out in the streets?
Well, I stayed at home for at least 2 hours after Michael Brown was shot, and his body remained in the street for 4.5 hours. So you have 4.5 hours of people on social media describing that there's a body in the middle of the street after the police have just shot him. So at a certain point, I go, okay, this is crazy. Eventually, a friend of mine named Kayla came to pick us up, and my friend Jay Stretch, we all went to Ferguson. We got to the scene, people were in the streets, but something very irregular that I noticed was that each and every police precinct in the city was in Ferguson. And that's never happened. Something like that typically wouldn't happen unless there was maybe a terrorist threat or a natural disaster. So I noticed that the cops were everywhere from different municipalities, different types of cops. And
people were gathering there, including yourself, and doing what?
People were very emotional. A lot of people were crying, and people were discussing what had actually happened with each other.
The policeman shot him and killed him. A grand jury decided there was not a case, that it was not murder, that there was, it was not manslaughter. You were arrested at the time of the protests, weren't you?
Well, I was arrested in October as a part of we organized a weekend of resistance, which was a national march and mobilization, and a weekend where young people came to St. Louis of all ages, demographics, and
because this is part of months, because of course the killing was in August, and then months there was various events. But why were you arrested?
Well, I was arrested in a Walmart with several other young organizers and activists We did an action of solidarity for John Crawford in Ohio, who was a young man who had a toy gun walking through a Walmart, talking on the phone to his girlfriend. And the police came in and gunned him down because they believed he had a real gun.
So what were you doing?
We were walking around the Walmart chanting. We had a sign that said, toy guns don't kill people. And
Walmart obviously called the police.
Yeah.
And you expected to be arrested.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not the first time you've been arrested. You've been arrested before.
Yeah, I was arrested previously for very petty things. In St. Louis, if you're black and you're young, you have a warrant. I used to live in San Diego. I moved back home. I'm walking down the street with a friend of mine. The police stop us in the middle of the street. They get out the car with guns out. They throw us on the car. They run my name, and I have a transit warrant that I had, got when I was 16 for getting on the train and not paying. The problem with this is I have no problem going to jail for, a warrant if it's a legitimate crime that I committed. But they throw you in the same exact cells with the murderers and the rapists and the killers for a petty ticket that you got when you were 16.
And it's borne out by the prison population, which is 37% of the prison population is African American, when it's about 13% of the whole population is. So, but this event, the killing of Michael Brown, obviously had a profound effect on you, and you are part of a campaign to change things. But did you think before, what were your feelings about how unfair life was if you were young, black and poor in the States?
I never quite thought about what that represents nationally or globally prior to Michael Brown's killing, prior to the uprising in Ferguson. I never really reflected upon that. What I did reflect upon was what it meant for me to be young, black and poor from St. Louis. I never thought about my global place, my national place. I could only relate to my immediate world, which was St. Louis, Missouri. And in St. Louis, Missouri, what that means is that we live in a very unbalanced and unequal state of living. We don't have the same opportunities for inclusion as other people. I like to describe it as we're not being allowed to fully participate in society, and we're not allowed to fully opt into American culture.
And that's because you're black?
I believe it's not only because we're black, it's because we're black and we're poor. I believe that my city is a very segregated city. Missouri is the last state to free the slaves. And the culture of Missouri reflects the fact that it's the last state to free the slaves. Even amongst black people, we have chosen to sort of accept this position that this is how things are, this is how it'll always be. The best we can do is just make it work. You have to play the cards you were dealt.
But there are people now listening to you will say, look, you've got equality legislation in the States, you've got a black president, that there are ways to deal with this, and states and people are doing that.
Well, the problem with racism in America is that for so long we've tried to handle this with a legislative answer, but we have not handled this with an emotional response. I was on a television show with Claire McCaskill in America, and she suggested that I run for office. And that's the part of the problem. When black people in America have a problem with racism, this is an issue of humanity, not an issue of legislation. It's an issue of compassion, not an issue of voters' rights. I believe that one of the negligent areas of the civil rights movement is that we did not move the moral compass of racism to the right direction. We were more concerned with the moral compass of black people. Martin Luther King, remain nonviolent, stay on the right side of justice, stay on the right side of the law. But we, at that point in time, had to explain our humanity to the oppressor. And we're still trying to explain our humanity to people who don't quite understand racism.
But you say what the civil rights movement was, and it was nonviolent, and you've said, I'm not an advocate of nonviolent protest.
Yeah.
Are you saying now what something different is needed?
I will proudly say that I'm not an advocate of nonviolent protest. I'm an advocate of militant, direct action nonviolent protest. That's totally different than nonviolent protest. For so long, we have stood outside the building and said, we're hungry. Can you feed us? We come back the next day. We're hungry. Can we have some of the food? We know all of the food is stockpiled into the building. We come outside, we hold hands, we wrap arms around the building and sing. We sing ourselves to death and we still get no food. So now we present an option that says, you know, we're still going to be nonviolent, but what happens if we come to this building and say, give us some food more aggressively? What will you feed us now?
Does that mean, because what happened, of course, in Ferguson is there was looting when there were those riots.
Correct.
Is that militant direct action?
No, it has nothing to do with that. The community was actually puppeteered into looting. That's a totally different
It's other people's fault that the looting happened.
No, Martin Luther King said that a riot is the language of the unheard. So, you know, when you kill a person in a community and you leave the body in the street for 4.5 hours, if you did that in any other community, something would happen. I don't know what would happen, but there's...
That justifies looting and criminality?
No, it does not at all, and I do not advocate that whatsoever. But what I'm saying is, for so long, black people in America have been treated as if we don't have emotions. And you leave a body in the middle of the street and you expect there to be zero emotional response. You expect people to go back in the house, kick their feet up and watch Grey's Anatomy, but there's a dead body in a pathway where children cross.
But so militant direct action that is non-violent.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand what that means.
Yeah.
What is militant direct action?
It's taking a firm, aggressive, direct stance against things such as white supremacy, colonialism, imperialism, homophobia, even sexism. It's taking a stance that says, you know what, I do not agree with this. This is wrong. I will not casually disagree with it. I will not casually...
What will you do? What does it mean? Give us an example, because it's hard to understand.
It's more so about the attitude. It's more so about the feel of it. It's more so about the desire to fight it constantly. It's not a passive...
Fight it verbally?
Yeah, fight it verbally.
Only verbally?
Or even if you do fight it physically, you don't need guns, you don't need to raise your fist. Even though I think that the unfair part of the narrative is that, you know, when you look at photos of Ferguson, and you do see people burning down buildings, you do see people throwing rocks through glass. However, you know, when you see the MRAPs and the tanks come and the M16s pointed at people's faces, you don't see the community go into the backyard, open up the garage and pull out another tank. So when I describe being militant, you know, we're still not quite, our militancy is more of, that term is more symbolic than it is actual militancy.
Are you at war with the police?
The police are at war with us. We see, if we were legitimately at war with the police, then we would be able to shoot back and fight back without being punished. There would be, you know, all is fair in love and war. They gun us down, and our deaths are seen with a.
But have you spoken to the local police in your area? You smile when I say that.
Yeah, we've tried constantly to have a sincere and honest back and forth dialogue with the police. The police have fought very vigorously to cover up some of their wrongdoings, and to, once again, I take it back to the fact that a lot of us are not looking for a political response. We're looking for a sincere opt into our humanity, emotional response.
But you're saying it's the police, and you're using the example in this case of not seeing black people as human.
Right.
Have you had a conversation with police people? Have you? You're one of the leading activists in this.
Yes, I've had several meetings with police. Several, black, white, you name it.
Because a quarter of the American police are black.
Right.
And yet you're saying they're just as bad as the white police.
Correct. It's not the... When we speak on things like white supremacy, and we speak on things like colonialism and imperialism in America, and the suppression and oppression of minorities, we don't speak on these things from a stance of a racial stance. We speak on these things from a systemic stance. So even how you can have a black president in the White House, it does not matter if his skin color is black, because his allegiance is to the system. When Barack Obama speaks...
It's the establishment.
Yes.
But when you speak to the policeman, I want to know what you have said, what you have heard.
Yeah. We ask them, we say to them...
You say we?
Yeah.
What about you?
The community. I don't represent myself when I'm in these spaces. I represent...
But has TEFPO, have you spoken to another policeman and had a conversation where you've treated them like a human being?
Yeah, I have no other option. I can't walk up to a police officer and do anything else. We speak to the police I have spoken to the police from a stance of compassion. My involvement in this entire situation is from a stance of compassion and emotional empathy.
And what do they say to you?
These conversations are deeply rooted in what the law allows them to do. They have a very robotic response. It's very difficult to crack through the shell of a police officer and to get them to have a conversation on a one-on-one basis where they speak to you as a person that understands what it's like to go through these things.
And when you, at the time of Ferguson, of course, we had the likes of the Reverend Al Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson come. You smile, why?
No, just can't you?
Well, I'm wondering what you think about because of course they are veterans of the civil rights movement, like your grandparents. They were involved and fought.
Yeah.
Are they not making a difference now?
I appreciate the work that they've done. I've spoken to Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. We, the young people of this generation, of this movement, once again, our goal is not to show up to the building and say, please let us in your building.
Which is what you say they're doing.
The civil rights movement was more so about creating a movement that was solely set up for heterosexual black men to assume a place of leadership in the community and to possibly establish legislation and laws that would combat racism and discrimination. So in many regards, the civil rights movement was very successful. But for us, it did not deal with the fact that, okay, once you have a law against prejudice and you have a law against racism, that does not make the person sitting next to you any less racist.
Okay, so how do you tackle that? How do you, TEFPO, change that person, change their emotions as you talk about it?
I feel, if you want me to be very honest, it is not my job to humanize myself to you. If you can't look at another human being and see the humanity, if I can't look at you and see this is a woman, this is a human being, she is flesh and bone, she has a heartbeat, she is breathing, she has a spirit, she has a soul, she has a brain, she has a family, she has people that care about her, she loves other people. We go through the same things, self-doubt. We get discouraged, we get happy, we feel joy, we feel anger. You have concerns for your family, you have concerns for your future. You have a place in this world. You deserve to be here. You have a right to be here that I can't take from you. I can't give you that, and I can't snatch it back. I don't have that right. If I can't see that in you, then I feel that your job as a righteous human being, you don't have to make that plain to me because I'm the person that's wrong. I think part of the problem is we take people that are racist, people that are sexist, people that are homophobic, and we try so hard to sway them. Okay, so
those whites who you are blaming for this situation, they are at fault. They are at fault, and to listen to you, it's a whole swathe of American society.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't believe that they're at fault because even the whites that are racist in America, they're just tools for a greater agenda.
But aren't they the ones who are not seeing you as a human being?
They are, but I still have compassion for them. I still love them. I still care about them. I still want the same things for myself that they want.
But what are they? What are they, victim of a greater system?
Yes, they are. They are victims. We are all tools in a greater agenda. And the way we view ourselves...
What agenda? Whose agenda?
It's the agenda of the top 1% of wealth in America, the agenda of people who benefit from, there's a creed of people that benefit from people being racially discriminated against. There's an entire systemic way that the country operates and functions off of the ignorance of racism, the ignorance of segregation
but
and separation.
But you look at that top 1%. Are you including President Obama in that? Are you including the Attorney General Eric Holder in that?
I don't know what they make.
Are you including the likes of Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court?
I'm including Barney the dinosaur if Barney the dinosaur helps to perpetuate these things. I don't look at Barack Obama and go, Barack, you're evil. I don't look at Eric Holder and go, Eric Holder, you're evil. I don't agree with the things that they've done. I don't agree with their handling of the situation, but at the same time, they are once again, they are entrenched into a system. They're entrenched. Barack Obama is the president. I'll explain it.
How do you change that system is what I'm wondering.
We change it by building community. We change it by choosing to love ourselves more. We change it by taking back what was stolen from us during slavery, planting history and heritage into the hearts of our children, reacclimating our culture into our own people.
Because Oprah Winfrey says, what I'm looking for, and she was saying this about Ferguson, what I'm looking for is some kind of leadership to come out of this to say, this is what we want, this is what has to change, and these are the steps that we need to make these changes, and this is what we're willing to do to get it. And that's one of the criticisms in a way, is what I'm asking you about the steps. What are the steps?
That was promotion for a movie. Oprah, we've had demands up since week 2, since Mike Brown was murdered August 14th.
So Oprah Winfrey's only coming along and saying that because she's promoting a movie?
That's me being sarcastic, but Oprah Winfrey doesn't know anything about the political landscape of Ferguson, nor the Black Lives Matter movement. People say we're looking for leadership. You can trust me that the United States government knows precisely who the key leadership is in this movement. You can trust that the media that chooses to demonize certain leaders on the ground, in the Ferguson Police Department and the St. Louis Police Department, Chief Dotson and Chief Jackson, they know exactly who the leadership is. Mayor Francis Slay knows who the leadership is. So when she says stuff like that, that's ridiculous, because my friends at home are being targeted, arrested, and thrown in jail blindly for almost nothing. And yet people like her go on TV and say there's no leadership.
So what's going to happen?
You know what? I don't know. That's like asking me to predict what can happen after a 400. We're in a relationship that's been in effect for 400 years, and it's a bad relationship. It's a horrible relationship. I have no idea what the relationship after this looks like. If you're in a relationship with a person that's abusing you and cheating on you and beating you and starving you, and they treat you horrible, and you're not going to, it's not logical to wait and stay in that relationship until you find a new relationship.
The Attorney General, Eric Holder, has said, in things racial, we have always been and continue to be, in too many ways, essentially a nation of cowards. That it's an issue we've never been at ease with, and given our nation's history, it's some ways understandable. And yet, if we're to make progress in this area, we must feel comfortable enough with one another and tolerant enough, you know this quote, obviously, to have frank conversations about the racial matters. Is he right? Well,
the problem in America is we've been having the conversation since Frederick Douglass. We've been having the conversation since Harriet Tubman. Martin Luther King had plenty of conversations. Rosa Parks had plenty of conversations.
So what? Conversations are not going to do it?
It's time for action. It's time, if you really mean that, Eric Holder, then show us something that represents that. In America, a black person is murdered by the police every 28 hours, as I'm sure you've heard the statistic. And I say to the country, if it's illegal, if it's actually concretely illegal for police officers to murder unarmed black people, if this is a fact, then show us statistics that support that, because the statistics do not support it. That's a symbolic quote, and symbolism doesn't bring people back from the dead. You can have all the symbolism in the world that you want. The fact of the matter remains, we're still being gunned down by the police.
Tef Poe, thank you very much for coming on Hard Talk.